Perfect.
All right, got the recording started. We got live. We're ready to start the show. And my name is Roy Canterbury, and I'm going to be hosting today on Archery Talk 101. And we have Alan on the line with us. But before we get into our show, which is going to be real exciting today, I want to let everybody know, how you can listen to the podcast. If you go out to Spotify or any place you get your podcast from, you can listen to it there, or you can go out to audible.com. That's a lot of people go out there because it just leaves it identifies the podcast, and when a new one comes out, it lets you know. And that's on audible.com, and it's free. Just look for Archery Talk 101 and it'll pop up. And if you want to watch the podcast, you can go out to my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. And it also shows up in my my timeline as well. But probably the best thing to do is join the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group, because there we have all kinds of archers out there, all kinds of different levels. We have instructors, we have bow techs out there. If you have a question or a problem, post the information there, and somebody will most likely will have an answer for you, and we'll just help you out whenever you can. So go ahead and join Archery Talk 101 Facebook group, and we'll help you if we can. So let's get started with the fun. Alan, how about if you introduce yourself and tell us a little something about you?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Roy. Yeah, my name's Alan Brunetta. I live out in Northern California. Grew up out here my whole life. Started young shooting a bow, just playing around the yard, and took off from there. Years and years of shooting. Got real heavy into target archery, shooting competitions, traveling all over. So hunting, anything I could do in the outdoors, I'd love to do it. So married, got a son. He's 15, so he's out there with me most of the time. Running around the woods, shooting his bow, and man, we have fun doing it.
So how is it, the hunting out there in California? You're up in the northern part, you said?
Yeah. I'm north of San Francisco. I like to clarify that I'm not part of San Francisco. Yeah. It's a different world down there, but hunting in California is actually really good. There's a lot of really good opportunity to hunt here in California. People don't think that. I grew up here in California, so that's my only choice besides my, I'll do trips out of state for hunting and stuff like that. But the hunting in California is really good. We have blacktail. The Columbian blacktail is the main deer I hunt. There's mule deer, antelope. We have all three species of elk. The bear population's a little crazy, so there's good bear hunting. Anything down from hunting in the flats and barley fields for pigs, or getting up into the high country. We can get up into some good elevation in California and hunt all different species.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a lot of variety to hunt. And
we do.
Now, how is the hunting seasons? Is it straightforward, or is it mixed up where you have worry about early season, late seasons, and all the kind of stuff? Some states have such a confusing hunting season that it's hard to keep track of.
It is. So for we'll just talk about deer hunting. So deer hunting for us is going to start second week of July. So pretty early we're hunting, and that's archery season. So California, they start their deer season in different zones. So the zone I live in is A zone, and then they got a B zone. So different parts of the state have different zones you can hunt. So depending on what tag you have, you can hunt those areas. But for A zone, it starts second week of July. It'll run 4 weeks for strictly archery, and then it'll have about a 5-day break, and then it'll go into the general season, which is opens it up for rifle. But as A zone archery closes, B zone archery opens. So B zone, you get further north. The B zone will go all the way from north of San Francisco, where I'm actually up Mendocino, all the way to Oregon border. So that's where I typically do a lot of my hunting, is up into the B zone area. We have the Trinities, we got the Yola Bully, so a lot of area you can backpack in. But as A zone rifle season, general season opens, I usually, because I primarily only bow hunt, So I'll then go up and start hunting B zone. It's the same thing. You got about 4 weeks of archery season, and then it goes into a general season. Um, just like every other state, we have tags that are allotted by points. A draw system. So you could put in for late season tags, which I do. Take even a resident still takes us 4 to 6, 7 points to draw like a late season tag. Typically, you can hunt like for archery. If you draw a late season tag, most likely it's going to be during the rut, give or take a week. So those hunts are really fun. Where we're able to hunt them in end of October into November, the blacktail. So it's fun hunting them in the rut. Rattling them in. Grunting at them. It's just a blast. But theoretically, you can hunt deer from second week of July all the way through November.
That's a fairly long season, and
It
we
is.
don't think of July being deer season because it's so
No.
warm.
Yeah. It
Ours
sucks.
don't start till September, so at least
Yeah.
it's starting to cool off.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, hunting second week of July, it can get rough. 100 degrees. You only get an hour or two in the morning, then you got to pretty much get in the shade and just wait the day out. So, but these deer here, they're used to it. They've got to go water even when it's 100 degrees and it's 2 o'clock. You could catch a lot of deer moving around underneath the trees, going back and forth to water. So if you do a lot of good scouting, the heat of the day, you just kind of hunker down. You can wait on a trail or wait at a water hole, and usually have some success doing that.
Now, with hunting in all that heat, after you shot your deer and you wait the appropriate amount of time, um, what is it like? How kind of time frame do you have before you have to find that deer and get it, start processing before it starts to spoil? Because in that heat,
Yeah,
it won't take long.
no, it doesn't. So yeah, you definitely don't want to sit too long waiting for it. Really knowing your gear and knowing how good you've practiced throughout the season to make that good shot is really crucial, because when you do get one hit and wait that 20 minutes, just depending on how good you think the shot was, you can get in right away, but you do definitely have to move pretty quick on it. So get it taken care of, getting it skinned out and in either the quarters hung or get it into a cooler.
Yeah, that's something that, here in Nebraska, we don't think about. Early season we do because September is still nice and warm and
Yeah,
October, but
yeah.
we start getting into later. 'Cause our archery season starts here in Nebraska September 1st, goes to December 31st.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes the whole time. Now, during the firearm season, 9 days during November, we got to wear orange just like the rifle hunters do. But, um, we've got time, in November, if you shoot when you get time, because it's generally going to be cold enough at night, it's not going to spoil.
No,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. And that's something that's like, how do you deal with all that heat, which we have to deal with early season, in the September timeframe. But, that's something that, I was kind of interested in, how do you deal with the heat and
It's tough. It's just each situation has its own problems it can count on. So if you got to shoot something and you can't find it and let it sit overnight, either the coyotes or the bears are going to eat it, or the side that's laying down is going to spoil, and you end up with half a deer, which sucks. But you just got to try to get in there quick and move slow enough. Hopefully follow the blood. Determine if you can find your arrows, how good the blood looks, and determine how fast or aggressive you can be to get in on and try to recover that animal.
so it's real important, especially for you guys shooting in the higher heat range to make sure that you're well practiced and your shots and you can
Mm-hmm.
make that good shot that you're going to make and to pass on ones that are marginal.
Yep. 100%. So yeah, it's fun. Hunting when it's that hot definitely has its challenges. Just carrying enough water. I'll do hunts where I might hike into a spot a couple miles, but then also other spots where you're not hiking in so far, so you can bring in plenty of water, or get back to your ATV and get stay hydrated and all that.
Yeah, that's real important when you're out there in that heat is make sure you're drinking plenty of fluids and
Yeah,
you know.
I got my black lab right here chewing on a squeaky toy.
Oh, that's what's making a noise. The
Yeah.
squeaky toy. The lab's having fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Come here. I was making a guest appearance. There she is.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
Yeah,
So yeah,
the dog's got to make an appearance. Why
yeah,
not, right?
right.
Now, do you take it your dog hunting with you or
I used to be really big into waterfowl and upland bird hunting quite a bit more, um, but not as much these days. Kind of my target archery side of things have taken over bird hunting, so she doesn't go with me. Um, but like I said, I don't bird hunt too much anymore. Besides turkeys.
yeah. Well, that's always a good thing to hunt
Yeah,
turkeys.
yeah, yeah. I love shooting turkeys.
And you must have a pretty good size a flock of turkeys around there and
We have we have turkeys everywhere. They're uh, they're quite the nuisance on some of the places that we're able to access to hunt. Um, we Me and a couple buddies, we hunt a lot of I would say urban rural areas. So smaller 2-3 acre plots where there's plenty of houses and just there'll be 50, 60 birds on one property. So and the a lot of the homeowners just don't like them because they tear their yard up. So we go in and whack a bunch of turkeys that way. But then also you know, we hunt them out in the big woods. So
yeah, they can be a pretty good sized nuisance. When you
yeah,
get that many and there's no hunting
yeah,
pressure, they're just
no,
going to keep multiplying until
yeah,
they're a problem.
they are. It's fun to shoot them with the bow.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be a challenge because it's such a small bird,
Uh huh.
and if you don't have much of a kill zone on it, and you don't get it in the right spot, they're going to fly off, and
Yeah, they're tough. They could take a broadhead and just keep going. You never find them. So you definitely shot placement on a turkey is key.
they're again practice, practice,
Yep.
practice.
Yep. But I mean,
So
go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, what's been kind of your most challenging hunt you've been on?
I mean, elk hunting is always a good one for that. I've hunted Colorado a bunch of times elk hunting. A long time ago rifle, and then the last 6 years archery, and just man, for how big those animals are, they sure are tough to get one shot. So I've been unsuccessful at getting an elk. So but man, hunting the elks in the big wood, that's where it's at. That's fun. And I would say that's definitely the challenging one for me right now. So we're gonna try again this year though.
Well, that's all you can do. Just keep
Yeah,
going and you'll be successful.
yeah,
Eventually you will.
yeah. You do learn a lot elk hunting when you're not successful. What's working, what's not working. What you could do different next time. So, but yeah, it's just one of those species that you just can't wait to do it again.
Yeah. And I was like, not just your challenging, but what's been one of your most memorable hunts you've been on? Those are always a
Uh,
little different.
I mean, I got a few there, and most of them revolve around my son. He's been shooting a bow since he was 2. So over the years, like he's 15 now, just turned 15. So he's my little buddy's not so little anymore. But we've I still remember his first turkey hunt. I took him on. I think he was 8 or 9, and he blasted one with his shotgun. We got out there first thing early in the morning, set up on some birds. Didn't work. We heard him gobbling over the hill, so we creeped in and wasn't able to get it done that day. But he was fired up and ready to go. We got back up. We knew where to go the next morning, where those birds came down off the roost, and we set up. And man, that was quite a morning. We had the two really nice toms fly down, called them in. They came in, I don't know, must have been 15 yards, if not closer. And, him being 8 at the time, at that little 20 gauge, that every time he shot it, he'd fly back 10 feet, but yeah, we got on that bird. We set up the shooting sticks for him, got him in, and man, he blasted that thing. Perfect shot, dumped it right there. He was so excited and run up there, and the bird's dead on the ground. He's looking at you. Is it dead? Is it dead? And so that was really cool. And that was a good, memorable one. And then another turkey hunt, him and I went on, and we set up in a ground blind, and I had him set up with guillotines, for a young kid like that to shoot turkeys. If you could get the birds in under 10 yards, which, spring season for us here, that's real doable. Set up the decoys, call them in, in a ground blind. I had a group of toms flew down. There was actually a bunch of birds on this hillside we were set up on this big property, and we called in this one tom. He came in and started working the decoys, and Jackson drew back, and he couldn't get a shot. He had to let down, so the arrow was flopping around, making noise, but he stayed calm and was able to draw the bow back, and he headshot that bird and obviously dumped it right there. And that was his first archery turkey. So we were all pretty excited, but still staying calm. And we actually switched spots in the ground blind because there were still toms out there. And anyone that knows hunting turkeys, you get one down, they flop around a little bit. You hang tight because more might come in. They see that one bird in distress, and they'll come in and actually beat it up. So we switched spots in the blind, and I called in another tom, and I whacked one. So we, had a beautiful picture, him and I, with matching toms. So that was pretty awesome.
That's cool. I've heard stories of other turkey hunters that they'll shoot one and might have shot the dominant one, and one of the smaller toms or jakes come in and just start tearing
Yeah.
it up. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm getting my pound of flesh back.
Yeah. 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 And there, for us here, turkeys, we have a spring season where you're allowed 3 bearded birds throughout the season. And then a fall season, you're able to shoot two birds, either sex. So you can get quite a few birds. And if you can get, you and a buddy out there, you can kind of start piling them up.
Yeah. And they taste really good.
They do. I do love some turkey.
Yeah, completely different than the ones you buy in the stores.
Oh, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. But, California, so we have pigs here. That pig season's year round. You used to have to buy tags, but California passed a law a year or two ago where you just essentially buy a pig stamp, and that allows you to shoot unlimited pigs throughout the whole year for, I think, $25. So in the area I'm at, there's quite a few pigs running around, and a lot of it's on private property. So some spots are hard. There's not a lot of public land pig hunting, but there's plenty. But yeah, the pigs are also super fun to shoot with the bow. You get into a group of, spot and stock. That's all we do pretty much out here, spot and stock. And you get into a group of, 5 to 10 pigs. It could be a blast. And so we got pig hunting year round, and then we got fall season for deer and bear. I love bear hunting. Shot a few bear with my bow, so that's always an adrenaline rush, and bears just are everywhere, which is a problem for California. They try to actually eliminate bear hunting a couple years ago, but all of us hunters and a lot of key uh, archery shops and other organizations stepped in and petitioned to get it off the ballot. So that that's the one downfall to, well, there's a few downfalls, but one of the main ones with California is a lot of their bills happen down south in LA where there's not a lot of hunting. So they try to eliminate all these things because they think it's cruel or whatever. But when it's the complete opposite, the bear population in California is just skyrocketing to where we're, as hunters, we're hoping that they will uh, issue more tags. So, but we'll see. But we still have it for now, and just be responsible out there, and we got some good hunting here, good hunting opportunities in California.
Yeah, it sounds like if you want to get some hogs, you can pretty much all year round you have something you can hunt.
Yeah, there is. So
Them hogs can get pretty destructive too.
they sure can. Yeah, we have, I'm close to wine country. I don't know if you've heard of wine country, Napa Valley. So I'm
Yeah.
close to that. There's vineyards everywhere, and so they definitely don't like when the pigs get in there and destroy all that.
Yeah, it's sure a group of hogs can definitely come in and do some damage to a vineyard.
Oh, 100%.
That's money out of their pocket for these
Uh-huh.
things that come in there, and you know that's nice about archery is a lot of times you get on property where you can't with
Yeah,
a rifle.
yeah, that's true. But yeah, then we like I mentioned earlier, we have all three species of elk: Tule elk, Roosevelt, and Rocky Mountain. So I have yet to draw a California elk tag. Even as a resident, it takes, potentially it'll take you 20 plus years as a resident to draw a tag. So that's always a little frustrating, but that one day I'm going to get it.
Yeah, and hopefully by the time you get it, you're still able to
Yeah,
physically go do it.
yeah, yeah. And then same thing with we have pronghorn antelope. So that's another really hard tag to draw as a resident. Uh, haven't drawn one yet, but I will. Just take me a few more years. And the kind of the glory animal of California that everyone wants to draw is desert bighorn sheep we have here also. So that's another one of those kind of once in a lifetime tags. Maybe I'll get one day, maybe I won't, but we put in for it every year.
Yeah, it's kind of nice you have them, but kind of the problem is you got to wait so long before you can finally draw a tag,
Yeah,
and I imagine non-residents don't even have an option. Don't I'll never draw one of those tags as a
yeah,
non-resident.
very very few. Because I think for like desert bighorn sheep, I mean, don't quote me on this. I want to say there's probably only 15 tags that they'll draw for the whole state. So, and then when you pretty much have every single hunter of California usually puts in for them. So it's definitely one of those tags that's really hard to draw.
Yeah. Well, fortunately though, you have lots of other things you can hunt.
Yep.
While you're waiting for it, it's
Yeah.
not like you
Absolutely.
if you don't get that tag, you don't hunt.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely interesting all the different options you have to hunt there in
Mm-hmm.
California. I guess I never really paid much attention. I didn't realize, you had all those different species of animals that you can hunt, and not even thinking about that. And this is kind of interesting, to hear you have all those options of different animals
You
that
do.
you can hunt.
And like I said, you can hunt them in almost any type of terrain you like, from hunting the flats or getting up into big elevation, big timber, and back you backpack in 12, 15 miles to a lot of places, and get to where no one's at.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, but
See, you get into target archery as well, then, don't you?
I do. Yeah, I do a lot of target archery. That started for me. I mean, it's got to be 15 years ago now. I really got into target archery. Uh, a good friend of mine, Hans and Adrian, own a local shop here called West Coast Archery. So when they first opened the shop, it was unfortunate timing for me, but I got laid off of work. So Hans and I have known each other for years before that. We went to high school together. And so at the time when he opened the shop, he was still working another job. So he actually hired me to come into the archery shop and work during the days when I was laid off work, while he worked the other job. And so I did that for quite a while, and I've just been helping in the shop ever since. But we got to a point where we we didn't really know what kind of tournaments were out there. So we just started going all these local club shoots and shooting 3D events. We shoot a lot of safari over here, which is orange spot targets, be a 3D animal with an orange spot on it, like Redding's a big one for us, the Western Classic. It's a big NFA event. But we started going to all these tournaments, shooting our hunting bows at 70, 75 pounds, just killing our shoulders the whole day, shooting, 60, 70 arrows. And then we finally figured out that we should get different bows to go shoot tournaments, a little more enjoyable. Not saying that the hunting bow is not enjoyable to shoot, but so we set up some target bows. And one year Hans is like, hey, look, we should probably go to this Vegas thing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Vegas tournament.
Yeah, that's a big tournament.
Yeah, yeah. So we 15 years ago we roll into Vegas, not knowing a single thing about shooting a three spot, and I mean we just got destroyed out there. But man, it really sunk its teeth into me, the tournament bug. And it just evolved over the years through the shop, and doing different things, and learning how to set up a target bow, which is completely different than the hunting bow.
Yeah.
So it's just been really fun. And then progressing, getting better, and going to Vegas those first couple of years, shooting a 270 if I was lucky, and then moving up the ranks over years, and learning and becoming friends with some other really good pro archers. And back in 17 I turned pro, and started competing with the big dogs, and traveling to Vegas and Chicago and Illinois, and going all these tournaments. One year I flew over to Rome and shot over in Italy for a world indoor. So man, it's just been fun, really fun. And it keeps me shooting year round too, because a lot of people, they don't shoot their bow till a couple weeks before deer season. So, and that's not good practice. You can't expect to be so successful if you can only practice for 2 weeks before deer season, and you
Yeah.
wonder why you missed a deer at 40 yards, that first week. So shooting the tournament archery just keeps me shooting year round. So it's been really good. So that way when hunting season rolls around, it's just that much easier just to get into my hunting bow. I've already been shooting, everything's there. So
You just got to pick it up because it's going to shoot slightly different.
yeah, slightly
Because
different.
set up different and everything
Yeah,
else. Maybe in a different model or a different brand of bow.
yeah, yeah. So, but it's been really good. It's been fun. Met a lot of really good people. I have a lot of really good friends now from all over the country that I talk to still regularly, just from people I've met at tournaments.
That's one nice thing about going to tournaments. You get to meet people from all over the country and sometimes all over the world, depending on where you're
Yeah,
going.
yeah, 100%. So
That's that's the fun part of doing a podcast is I get to talk to archers all over the world because
yeah,
it's recorded online. So you're in California, I'm in Nebraska, and we can chat just like we're sitting down together.
yeah.
And
What time is it in Nebraska? Is it 9:30 right now?
no, it's 8:30.
8:30. Okay, 2 hour
Yeah.
difference. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, but nice thing about when you have a calendar set up, it figures time zones out. So, it was scheduling in my time zone, but you're picking in your time zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's nice. So you don't have to try, okay, I'm in central, you're in different time zone, and how do we configure it? And it's like, no, calendar's still out for you.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, it worked out good.
And that's to do when I get, someone get on here, I give them the link to my calendar and they just book it in there, and I use that calendar for everything. So, my work schedule's in there, anything else I got going on, I
Yeah.
scheduled in there. And, that way it's like, hey, if the time's open, I'm available.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Works
that's
out
great.
really nice.
Yeah. So what do you got planned here? What you got some hunts coming up this year or what?
Um, Not yet. I've got I had a bypass surgery last year and I just about recovered from it. And then
Okay.
a guy decided he wanted to try and full speed run it back me and spin me around. And so I'm still trying to recover from that. So
Man.
if I get out in the field this year, it'll most likely have to be a crossbow
Yeah.
because I'm not sure I can even pull my compound bow back yet.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not going to get out there and pull a trigger on my rifle.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see upright.
Yeah. Yeah, so and my son, I think he's got a crossbow that I could use, if I can't get my bow back, and
Yeah.
I'm still working on that, and so I don't really have any hunts planned. I've got
Yeah.
some land that's not too far. In fact, I could walk to the one. I
Wow.
did after my first surgery. I was actually walked down. It's a mile to the highway and across the highway, and there's the field, and I walked around the whole field and everything, and I could walk to my hunting spot. The other one. It's a little bit further. I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to walk. I've taken four wheelies out there because I can take the back roads and it's like 3 miles
Yeah.
is all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Good.
so I got a couple close places.
Okay.
Not the best land, but hey, it's a place I can go.
Yeah. No, that sounds good.
There are deer and turkey and other stuff out there. You know, Probably not going to want to shoot the coyotes on property because the farmer feeds them.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I wouldn't want to shoot the coyotes in there, but they do eat a lot of other stuff. So
Yeah.
but there's coyotes, but he feeds the raccoons and coyotes. There's some out there, and the one property I have that's close by, I can hear the coyotes out there quite often in the summertime, and
Yeah.
they always hang out on the other side of the creek where we don't have permission to hunt.
Yeah. Figures. Figures.
Yeah, maybe sometime I'll go talk to him again and say, hey, you gotta be hunting the coyotes over there. Let me go. He said I can go kill some of the coyotes.
Cool.
It's kind of fun. It's
Yeah.
some of the floods we've had is eroded a lot of the creek away,
Hmm.
and we used to have right at the end, mile from where we live, right next to the highway. I used to see flocks of easily 3 dozen turkeys.
Wow.
And since the flood, I'd seen a flock one time, maybe half a dozen.
Yeah.
Because where it flooded, it was like probably 6 feet above flood stage.
Wow.
And so yeah, it the road and you couldn't get into where I live in the village I live in. You got one paved road, and you got two gravel roads.
Hmm.
Well, the run road is unpassable if there's any kind of a rain because the bridge is down at the bottom of the valley and it floods, over it. And
Yeah.
then the other way is flooded coming in, and even the highway was flooded, but it was passable. But the other way in, there's a way to go roundabout and get it back in at home because I come home from work and I had to drive through part of the flooded highway. Um, and then I couldn't get into my where I live because
Yeah.
it was flowing. There's no way you could have went there. It was had logs that's moving across the
Hmm.
road, and so I'm in the town here right by us, and my wife says, "Well, there's a way in. I'll come out and get you." And we decided to drive through some flooded ground or roads, but it wasn't flooded very much. But there was
Yeah.
one way I could get back in to get back home. Otherwise, I was gonna have to stay in my car for who knows how long because
Yeah.
I couldn't go anywhere.
Wow. That's the
Yeah,
way it goes sometimes.
we had a blind a platform we'd put in, and And the one flood we had eroded it back to one of the legs. And then this one, it's eroded it back past that one leg. So I got one leg with concrete on it, just kind of hanging there, cocking the platform over. And we
Mm.
got to get out there one of these times and knock that off and try and do something because there's nothing underneath the one leg.
Wow. Yeah, you don't
It
want.
eroded it that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
The one farmer lost probably 20 feet of his farm land. It just
Wow.
eroded the bank out that much.
That's horrible.
Yeah. And then we had a storm come through, uh, like 90-mile-an-hour winds.
Mm.
It took over a bunch of trees, uh, power lines down for sometimes a couple of miles. All the poles are down, and you go looking, and they're putting up new poles and new poles, and
Yeah.
they were out of power for like 4 or 5 days.
Wow. That just shows you, man, the humans are no match for Mother Nature.
No,
She can be brutal. So
a generator helped because we could power our house, and her son lives next to us, and we could run extension cord over there, and at least get some stuff in there. We
mhm.
could power their freezers and some fans and stuff like that. And but
Yeah.
no TV, no internet, all that was down. You're pretty much, we got lanterns that we're running at night that we can charge throughout the day, and playing cards or something. That's
Yeah.
all you could do because when the sun went down,
Yeah.
if you didn't have a flashlight, you had no light.
No. No, you got no entertainment. You gotta go outside and shoot your bow.
Yeah. And the one with all the water, everything was soaking wet. And
Yeah.
the other with all the wind had come through. We got trees, one tree branch out of a big tree fell into another tree and kept it from hitting the ground. And then we'd put a great big strap on it. And then when it finally come to start cutting it down, they started taking the strap down, and that branch was starting to fall. So they had to cut that down and work that down to get that off. And yeah, it's been a lot of work trying to you know get that. And that was been probably 6 months ago now, just about.
Wow. Okay.
So we're coming up on the season. We can get some pretty warm weather and winds. And now, like today, it was like 102, 103. Tomorrow's
Wow.
supposed to be about the same. Sunday about the same. And then it dropped back down. But yeah, we don't want to be outside too much.
No, no.
Not in
Yeah.
that heat.
You gotta go to your local shop and shoot some indoor.
Yeah, yeah. Because I got a target out back, but right now I can't pull it back. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just one of the things that we got to work on it. And I've got some elastic bands that I'm using to kind
Mhm.
of work up the muscles a little bit. And
Yeah.
and I was hit so hard that ended up with a concussion out of it. And so I'm just now, that was April 2nd, and I'm just now getting to the point where I was getting worse. Now I'm starting to get a little better. So
Hmm.
now I can work on it and try and get a little bit better. But I've been off work for 4 weeks just because I couldn't drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't focus enough and everything else. And it all stopped that, when you have a concussion that messes
Hmm.
things up. So,
Yeah.
working on shooting a bow is, I'm working on it, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
one of those things
You'll
that,
be all right.
I can still talk to archers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
That's
have to shoot. I can still
yeah.
teach,
Yeah.
which I do some of that for, Nebraska Game and Parks has different events. And a
Hmm.
lady I've known for, geez, probably 30 some years, heads up the program here in Nebraska. And they use a lot of volunteers.
Nice.
And they'll have different events, like the women in the outdoors and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And
Yeah.
and and I go help her out, teaching. I don't have to be able to draw the bow to teach you how to
No,
shoot.
you don't. You don't. Yeah,
And that's nice.
it is. It's good. Get out there and spread the love of the game. Get
Yeah.
people right track, and that's always good.
And it's always nice. I like teaching new archers,
Hmm.
just because they don't know what's going on, don't what you're doing, and I like to teach them. what's going on and how to do different stuff. And then when they see all of a sudden, oh wow, this is cool. Like the person that doesn't want to shoot a bow, and you finally say, just try one shot and shoot one shot and turn and say, can I do it again?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was just down at the archery shop earlier today, stopping in and seeing everyone and saying hi. And I get there, and all of a sudden, a bunch of people come in the door. So I had things to do, but I helped out a customer, and he had someone gave him a bow. It was just a recurve, and string was wrong, had no arrow. So it was, he was so excited just to get the couple things he needed, and he was shooting a bow. So it's definitely a fun sport for all skill levels.
Yeah, I remember one time I went into I used had besides I had my own store, then I worked at Bass Pro for a while, and then Cabela's, and then Bass Pro bought Cabela's out, and
Mm-hmm.
I was up there, and I worked in the archery department, and I was up there one day after I left, and the other guy they really knew what was going on, so they had really nobody that knew what was going on. In fact, didn't have anybody in the archery department at all. This guy come in and was interested in a crossbow, and so I'm taking and I'm basically telling I'm one of the guys that's I just sold a crossbow. You need to go down there and collect your money from him and finish selling it. Yeah, because I had him everything all going on. It's like I had him ready to buy, except I
Yeah.
couldn't sell it because I didn't work there anymore.
Yeah. It's funny.
That's why I learned when I go into Cabela's, don't wear a tan shirt.
Yeah. You blend in with the staff.
Everybody thinks you work there,
Yeah.
and uh, and I don't mind helping them.
No.
They somebody comes up and think you work there. It's like it's just gonna. And then can you ring me up? It's like, I don't actually work here anymore. But,
Yeah.
hey, let's see if we can find somebody to ring you up.
Yeah. Perfect.
And then it's so nice, sometimes you go in and the guy that's there that's supposed to know about archery don't really know what's going on. And now you're teaching them, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. That's a good segue into this next little talk is, I always try to get people to, for archery specific, and there's a lot of different sports, but I always try to tell people to support your local pro shop. It's nice to have a Cabela's or Shields or Bass Pro Shop. Those are good, quick. You're out of state trying to get something, but if you're local and there's a local archery shop, try to support those guys because they're trying to compete with Amazon and Bass Pro Shop and those big box stores where, I mean, it may be fine that they don't sell a bunch of archery stuff because they don't need that to stay in business. So, support the local guys, whether it's an archery shop, a local gun shop, fishing store. That's really important for all of us outdoorsmen and outdoor women. So
Yeah. And the nice thing about going to a pro shop is, you got somebody there that knows what's going on.
exactly.
You go to the box store and you just don't know.
Yeah,
You might go in. One time I went in, and this guy actually applied to a different department. And I said, well, I got an opening in archery. It's like, well, I shot a bow when I was a kid.
yeah,
Okay, you're
yeah,
now the archery expert.
yeah. So, some departments it's okay to not know a bunch, but when it comes to archery, it's very specific with how technically advanced all these new equipment is and how to properly fit you for a bow. That's important. So we see a lot of improper setups come through our shop that we have to fix, which we're more than happy to fix. And usually, a customer will come in with a bow that they got somewhere else and they didn't know how to set up a bow. So, they bring it to us and the draw length's too long or too short. They can't pull it back. The arrows are the wrong spine. So, we're more than happy to help people out and get them the right gear. Archery is very specific. You go with some friends and you're like, oh, can we just share a bow? And you're like, not really, maybe a recurve, but when it comes to compound, they're so specific to each individual person that, it's good to go somewhere that they know how to set you up, efficiently and correctly.
Yeah. Now, like if you were the same draw length as I am, you're
Mm-hmm.
right-handed, I'm right-handed. I shoot 29, you shoot 29. I shoot 70 pounds, you shoot 70 pounds. Can I shoot your bow? Well, yeah, because it close to fits me.
Yeah, you
But
can.
is it really going to fit me? No.
No.
But you can shoot it
Yeah.
fairly well, and but you still want it to fit you because my style is a little bit different than yours. I'm going to anchor slightly different,
Yeah.
you know, and even though we might be the same draw length, the difference between our corner of our mouth and our nose and our eyes might be
Hmm.
different,
Yep. 100%.
which means the peep isn't going to line up.
Yep.
Or if you line up the peep, then now you're anchoring in a different spot. And there's
Yeah.
just so many things in there. And
Yeah.
that's why you want to go to a pro shop because they're going to know what to do.
Yeah.
If you go to the box stores, whether it's Bass Pro, Cabela's, there's Shields, there's Dick's, there's all those other names of stores. Do they have people that know what's going on? Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know when I was at Bass Pro, there was four of us. Between the four of us, we probably had 80 years of experience
Yeah.
working on bows
Yeah.
because we all come from other shops.
Sure.
We
Sure.
all knew what's going on. And then when I went to Cabela's, I was the one that knew. I was teaching the archery lead how to work on bows.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then one of the guys from the Bass Pro, he come out there, and that was kind of interesting when I was in training, and John comes in, and I seen him in there, so I went and talked to the archery manager, and I looked at him and says, "If you don't hire him, you're dumb or you're stupid or something like that." I said, "If you don't hire him, you're stupid." And I turned and walked out. And then
Perfect.
when the manager for the Star Company, I said, "Where that goes here, we need him."
Yeah.
Because I
No.
knew how good he was,
Yeah.
and he ended up staying a little bit longer than I did. But once the two of us were gone, there was nobody knew what was going on. One of the things we used to do is Cabela's, they'd get all the returns, and they have in a great big 4 foot cube. They
Yeah.
just send them all to our store. From all the Cabela's, they'd send them to our store because we'd pull them out and we'd take parts off of one, make another one, and like if you get five of the same model in, chances are you can make at least one good one.
Yeah.
And because there's always something wrong with them. And so we would make all these, would take all these, and we put them in our used rack. We didn't sell them as new; we sold them as used
Yeah.
because they were, we'd pull them apart and we'd made them work, so they weren't technically new, but so we wouldn't sell them as new. And then we had a whole bunch of the low end starter type bows, and we basically just cut the riser down, cut the top and bottom, as long as you has the grip and the sight, and we put sights on it and a little hook on it, and you'd hang out. You go, let's see what the sight looks like. You pick it up, and you can hold it up.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
You
It's
know,
perfect.
yeah, that's what we did with some of the bows that
Yeah.
had no value because new they were only $150 or something,
Yeah.
and used if we got them fixed up, maybe 70, 75 bucks. And then if we had to start buying parts to put on them, now then we're putting as much into parts as the thing is worth. So a lot of
Hmm.
them that we couldn't make work, then because we didn't make strings, so we actually had to buy strings, even though
Oh,
I've made strings for a long time, but I wasn't going to be making them for that because
no.
we'd buy them, and now you're spending $100 or so, 7,500 bucks for strings and cables, and it
Yeah.
wasn't worth it. On those low end guns.
Yeah. Boy, have the times changed.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what, strings and cables run now because I still got all this stuff to make strings. I could probably make a new string every week and I'd never run out of material
Yeah.
except the end loop material and the center serving. As
Yeah.
far as string material, I've got, probably 15 different colors.
Wow. Yes, just a good set of strings. I'm running gas bow strings. They're probably one of the best ones on the market. You're going to be 150 to 210 for a good set of strings now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could
Well,
build them, that's a skill I don't have or the time I don't have. So
right.
go for it. But I rather just keep it to the professionals. Let them. That's what they do for a living. That seems a lot easier to me.
Well, and one time I was making some strings for my one bow, my one I use for target. And it's like, I don't know what colors I want to use. So I made up little bitty short ones. They're only, maybe a foot long.
Look at
Here,
that. Yeah.
this is a blue and um, a copper. And then this one's a black and a copper.
Oh, nice.
This one's black and a chartreuse or fluorescent green.
Yeah.
And they're a little bit short ones. Some of them you can't tell. This is like a mountain berry and
Yeah.
a
You
brass
get
or
a little
something like that.
sample pack there.
Yeah. And then, this one is fluorescent pink and fluorescent green or chartreuse. And then I've got another one here. And some of these I've just been laying around, so I can't tell this one here. This one is actually three different colors.
Oh, I can see
I
that.
made a
Yeah.
three color one. Yeah. It's got red, kind of a mountain berry or maroon or something, black, and then a copper or tan. There's so many different ones that you can do, and they're just kind of sitting over here, and I used
Yeah.
to have them hanging up, and they kind of fell on the floor, and it's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's fine.
that's the thing about custom making strings. You can do whatever you want with them.
You can. You
You
can.
know, three color ones. I don't normally recommend three color ones, just because you don't have a good separation between the colors.
Mm-hmm.
Because one third of them are one color, the other third's another color, and then you got one third you got to split in half between the two to go around your peep. Unless you get one of those that splits it in three, then you're okay. But I don't like those because you always have a string in your eye. You have to look through. But two colors are really nice, and you can do all kinds of weird stuff with them and different ways of twisting them, form little
Yeah.
different cut shapes, and
Yeah. Yeah. The last quite a few years I've gone with more of just a natural color string. Just the dye in some of those colors, at least for like the tournament side, it can be a little more sensitive to the heat or the cold. The dye, some of those colors will stretch different than other colors. So more on my target side, uh, using that natural, like the gas bowstring has the freak show. So it's an all natural, super low to no wax in the string. So that's a real stable string. I mean, the colors sure look nice though.
yeah, they do. And when I was making strings, one of the things I do is like, okay, what colors you want? Black. No, that's boring. Pick two colors you like. It doesn't
Yeah,
care what it is. Make it special to your bow. Now, if their bow is all black, I'll accept the black. Then it makes sense to have just a
sure.
black string,
Yeah,
just because it all matched. But they're like, I'm going to make a string with two colors in it, same price as I do one color. It
yeah,
doesn't really matter.
yeah.
I just got an extra knot to tie is all.
Hmm.
And, it's like, pick two colors. What's your two favorite colors? What's your high school colors? What colors you want. And
Yeah,
I do the same thing when I made arrows.
yeah,
I was like, okay, here's a dozen arrows with fletched with veins. Here's the price, and here's the price with feathers. You want veins or feathers, and in what colors?
yeah.
You want two of one color. What's the other color? And
Possibility.
then pick them. And I've done some that with the orange fluorescent wraps, and then two orange and I think one red or something like that.
Hmm.
And that was a bright arrow.
Yeah, yeah. It's good.
Now I like on my hunting arrows. I like I've got a fluorescent white, a reflective white
Yeah,
wrap. And I'll put that down below my feathers because I don't like to cut through it and then have to and stripping them off and everything else.
yeah.
So I'll put that on it, and the flashlights just pick it up really easy.
Oh, good. Yeah.
It's kind of like the reflective tape that they put on your roads.
Hmm.
Your headlights hit it and it shines, and then you
Yeah,
take the flashlights with like LED stuff in it, and it's just like, well, there it is,
yeah. That's perfect.
and you don't have to worry about losing your luminoc.
Yeah, yeah,
I did that once. I didn't see a branch, just a little bitty branch. I shot, and it caught that branch, and of course, what goes on? The knot goes flying out. It shuts it off, and you never find it. I didn't even try and look for it because I knew there's like, where am I going to look?
yeah. It's tough. You trying to find those arrows sometimes.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing you've got to think about too. And they got some now that's a button that you push inside of it.
Yeah,
Um, the ones I use is Luminox, so I think that was the first one to come out.
yeah. Good.
but I don't use those anymore either. So
Yeah, I've never been a Luminant guy.
because then you got to pull them out a little bit and shoot them, pushes
Yeah.
them in, and then I just put the wraps on, makes it so much easier. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Good.
so how often do you work at the archery shop?
I consider myself a uh, part-time employee. I'll take credit for being the first employee of West Coast Archery, besides Hans and Adrian that own the shop. But like I said, I've been helping them for the last 15 plus years, and so I'll go down to the shop. I work 410, so I'm off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I got a good schedule. Uh, I try to get down to the shop a couple times a month, where I'll just hang out for the day, or a lot of times if Hans or any of the other guys are taking a day off and they need an extra body, I'll go down in there and work. So because I do have a full time job working for the county for the water department, so I try to get down there as much as possible, just hang out, talk to customers. It's fun, I'll do seminars. One seminar a year. I'll host something down there. I'll host a indoor money shoot in our indoor range. So I'm in there quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's the part I miss about my store is interacting with the archers, teaching them to shoot, and
Yeah,
helping them get it set up. And I you wasn't real fond of all the other work that goes into running
no,
a shop or owning a shop, but that part I enjoyed. That's the part I missed.
yeah,
Not the other paperwork and all the other stuff you
yeah,
have to
yeah.
do.
I like doing the fun stuff. So
Yeah,
I'll leave all the business to them, and I like just talking to everybody. Sharing hunting stories, and you meet all sorts of great people that come in.
yeah, and that's why I like helping out with the Nebraska's Game Parks when they have archery events that I like to help out with that because I get to talk to archeries and help them out. And
Yeah.
uh, I was able to talk to the guys that run the tree stand safety.
Okay.
I went down the last time I was up to they had Missouri Valley Outdoor Expo every
Mm-hmm.
year up at Ponca State Park, and it's the north east part of Nebraska, right there next to the border, South Dakota border.
Okay.
And um, I the last time I was up there, I spent about an hour and a half interviewing these guys, talking about tree stand safety, and
Oh,
I got a podcast on that as well as you can catch that on my YouTube channel as well. But
nice.
one of the things that I didn't realize that 80% of the tree stand accidents are from homemade tree stands.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And majority of the accidents are from tree stands,
Mm,
getting in or getting out of your tree stand.
yeah.
And that's something that didn't really realize. And then if you have your safety harness on, you've if you fall, the safety on it keeps you from hitting the ground. You've got about 5 minutes, and you're going to die anyway because it
Yeah.
cuts the circulation off on your legs, builds up an acid in there, and all of a sudden, now that you get your blood flow, and that acid goes to your body and up with a heart attack. That's why all the new safety harnesses have a little strap that hangs down that you can
Mm-hmm.
put your foot in
Yeah.
there. But
Stepping
what
it.
they recommended is have like another lifeline. The lineman's line that you use go in and out. You should be using one of those. Have that around you because now you can use both feet in there. And
Mm-hmm.
then they showed a technique. You don't have to watch it.
Yeah. I'll
If you're
check it
interested
out.
in that technique, but what you do to get down is you tie knots, those slip knots, and then what you're going to do is you're going to push up on that because that first six knot, when you pull, it stops. You got to
Mm-hmm.
take pressure off in order to move it down. So what you do is
Yeah.
you tie all these little bitty knots about 6 inches apart, and you stand on the top one. You slide your knot down, then you release down. You get on the next knot. You put pressure on it. It pops the knot above it down. So
Mm-hmm.
now you're going down 6 inches at a time all the way down, and now you can finally get back down. And they said
Yeah.
one of the
Get
things you
up.
want to make sure you do is practice that. Hang off your safety harness,
Mm-hmm.
just so you feel what it feels like. And that's something that I'd never thought of until I talked to them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a that's a big thing to do, is how do you recover from a fall?
Yeah. Yeah. Out west here, there's guys that tree stand hunt, but I'd say majority 95% of all our hunting is spot and stalk. So, but yeah, whitetail country, that's a completely different ball game, with tree stands and stuff like that. So that's definitely a good thing to know if you're a tree stand hunter.
Yeah, and around here, in Nebraska, it's a lot of tree stand. It's not as much spot and stock, but you don't, up there in California, you don't have as much tree stand hunting as we do here. So, you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about that because you're not actually elevated.
Sure.
You're not wearing a safety harness
Yeah.
because you're on the ground or in
Yeah.
a blind or something like that.
Yeah.
And, that's something that, always need to think about. And yeah, I don't mention this in every podcast, but I try to, once in a while, it just kind of appropriate to
Yeah.
mention it, and take a look at that. And if you have questions on it, get a hold of one of us or somebody, or even get a hold of whoever runs your game and parks, or
Hmm.
they call them different states call them different things. Get a hold of them and find out. It's like, hey, do you have anything on tree stand safety? I'd like to get some more information.
Yeah.
And if they don't, get a hold of me, because I'll get you in touch with our guys here in Nebraska.
Perfect. Perfect. Sounds good.
Yeah, that's something that I never thought of. When I first started, we just climbed up in the tree. We
Yeah.
didn't have a safety harness. And then it's like, well, I need something. So I just tied a rope around my waist, and then finally I
Yeah.
had a safety belt that around your waist. And I used that for many years.
Hmm.
And then now I've got a harness, so as you learn more, you learn what you need to do. And um, I I like to set my harness up so that as I'm standing up, I feel a slight tug pulling down on it. And when I'm sitting down, I have a slight tug pulling up.
Okay.
So now if I try to sit down on my stand and not on the seat, I can't get there.
Okay.
So even if I stepped off the side, I'm not going to be below my tree stand.
That's
Um,
good.
and that way you can get in there, and, a lot of things you guys don't worry about, but, make sure you put your pegs, you're climbing up the side, and you always climb up above your stand and you climb down onto your stand, and you don't use the stand as a step because it gives away. Now you're falling.
Yeah.
And, a lot of things. And, like when you're spotting stock and going through just a field,
Yeah.
you've got to be careful. You're climbing up hills and
Yeah.
stuff, how's your
Watch out
footing?
for rattlers. Watch out for rattlesnakes. We run into
Yeah.
those all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Here in the east part of Nebraska, we don't really have them, but you go out further west, and we
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
Um, so it's not really can't be here, but normally on this far east,
Hmm.
we don't have them. But you get out in the prairies, and yeah, rattlers is something you have to think about.
Yeah. Always something.
Until it gets below freezing, then normally the snakes aren't out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what other advice would you give, like an archer that's getting ready to hunt, like in your California area, because that's, where you have expertise in
Yeah.
there. What would you tell somebody that says, hey, I want to start shooting a bow, um, but they don't know what they want to, do? What would you tell them and go through with them?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I definitely, if it was someone local here in my area, I'd get them, be like, hey, meet me down at the shop. Let's go down to West Coast. Let's get you sized proper. The first bit of advice is like I was kind of touching on earlier with the pro shop. Get in that pro shop and get fit the proper way the first time. A lot of people on the very first time they try to cut corners and just get something, order something off of Amazon or eBay. I see it all the time. People come in the shop. Oh, I bought this bow off of eBay. I said, well, how much did you pay? Oh, I paid $400. I says, well, unfortunately, it's not going to work for you. It's just not a bow that's going to fit you. We can't get parts for it. We can't make it fit you. So that's the first big thing is get fit proper. People don't understand and know that you can go down to the shop and you could buy a brand new bow, and you could still get a really inexpensive bow that can get set up for you proper. People think, oh, I can't go down there and spend $2,000-3,000. We get you set up with a bow for under $600. So that $400 you just spent on eBay and the $300 it's going to cost to get a set of strings and maybe a new cam for it to fit you, you're already there. So, I try to steer people to start in the correct way, by doing that. Go to your shop and get fitted. And a lot of times, like when people come in our shop, we get them set up with a bow. Doesn't matter if it was a $500 bow or a $3,000 bow. We're going to take the time to fit you, and then we're going to take the time and actually give you some shooting tips, not just give you a bow and say, all right, get out of here. I'm gonna go help the next customer. We'll take you in the range, and all right, this is how you need to anchor. This is your grip. Set your grip proper, get your right footing. Keep that back shoulder down. So, getting started the correct way is, man, that's the biggest thing. So, and doesn't hurt to ever sign up and go do a lesson with someone.
Right. Yeah, I know when I sell a bow, I come with shooting instruction because, well, part of setting it up for them, they got to have their form correct.
Yeah.
They got to be shooting correct. You can't set the bow up
You can't.
if they got a bad form because you just can't get them to fit you. So, I've heard that's part of setting up the bow is teach them how to shoot.
Yeah.
One, it was kind of two functions. One, it got them shooting better, and two, it got them more interested in archery. So now were they going to come back to buy their upgraded stuff?
Yeah.
Come back to me because
Absolutely.
I didn't oversell them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard beginners have no reason to buy mid-level or upper level bows because their skill's not there. They're not going to know the difference other than their pocketbook's emptier.
Yeah. 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 Another question I ask all the time, all right, what's your budget? Tell me your budget. I can get you a brand new bow within your budget usually. So, but yeah, like with the form, your draw length can vary an inch just with shoulder placement. That back shoulder, if it's up high versus low, your draw length. So if you set them up with a high shoulder, and then all of a sudden they come back 2 weeks later and they've learned to put their shoulder down, you probably have to readjust that bow.
Right, and they're also asking for shoulder problems with that shoulder pushed up.
Yeah.
That's if you want shoulder problems, push them shoulders up.
Yeah.
You don't want them drop them down.
Yeah.
And that's just some of the things that, getting with the coach and I like to tell a lot of the new archers, buy a low end bow, the low end sight, the low end rest. You buy your lower end arrows. Don't go out and buy your comp pros.
No.
Buy whatever arrow is basically the cheapest that's spined correctly for you. Now, spend some money on a release.
Yeah, good release is always good.
You want a good release because that's your trigger to fire the bow. And if that trigger is moving, you're going to think about the trigger and stop aiming. And that's what I tell them. Spend money on a good quality release. And there's a lot of companies. I have a Carter, I have a Scott. Those are both good ones. Stans make good ones.
True Ball
makes another good one.
Big True Ball.
Those are probably the brands that I would stay with.
Yeah.
I kind of always push the Scott ones because, well, as at Cabela's, we had a lot of Scott releases.
We sell a ton of Scott releases. They're great.
And they're good. I had one guy come in, the trigger fell off on it. So I called them up. They sent a new trigger in for free, and I put it in a little Loctite this time.
Yeah.
And the Carter's good too. I dropped my Carter one time, broke the trigger off. And this has been many years ago, but I told him, it's like, okay, when I talked to him, it's well, send it back. So it cost me like $5 to send it back to him. And I told him, it's like, I don't use that knurled knob. Don't bother putting it on. It come back without the knob because I don't use it. It just gives them, I just take it off. And what I have now, it's sitting in the box that the release come in. And I'll never use it because the way I shoot, I don't need them. And it come back and it cost me this. They paid for shipping back to me. I just paid to ship it to them.
Yeah.
And that's what you get when you buy, good quality release. They stand
Absolutely.
behind them, and
Yeah.
and you don't want to have, a cheap release.
Yeah.
Some of the cheaper ones, the trigger travels so far, you can't teach
Mhm.
somebody proper release because it moves so far,
Yeah.
and you just can't use it. And so don't buy the cheap releases. Buy a good expensive one. You don't have to spend $400 or $500 for one, but you might need to spend $75 $100
Yeah.
for a good quality
Yeah.
release,
Good
but
one.
you're going to have it. I got my Carter over 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and my Scott is even older than that. I
Yeah.
got that like in late 90s. One of the
Hmm.
guys was the shooter, and he shot for Scott releases, and he was upgrading his stuff, and he sold me his, and that's probably, I'd say probably 30 years old. Still
Wow.
works just fine.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like about the archery industry too. Is I mean, 95%, if not more, of archery equipment that you get here in the U.S. is all made in the U.S. So that's always a cool thing. Like your most all your bows are made here in the U.S. All the releases, sights, string, everything. A lot of the arrows come from overseas. Some of the different carbons, but yeah, it's good to support a good U.S. company also.
Yeah, and you've got factories like PSE. You want to see where they're made? Go down to Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, can I could tour the factory? And I, don't know what they'd go through for that. But when I was a PSE dealer, I went down there and I spent a week down there in Tucson, Arizona
Yeah.
at their dealer school, learning how to make strings, how to make the steel cables. When the bows used to have steel cables on them.
I remember those.
Um, and that was an art.
Yeah.
And if you have a bow with a steel cable on it, it breaks, you're done.
You're done.
You're
We,
not going to find one. And if you did, you're going to spend in $200-300 for one cable, and you need two
yeah.
because you can't replace one. You got to replace them both. And tearing bows apart. Here's the bow, and you tear it apart, so no two parts together, and you put it back together, and
Yeah.
on the different bows, and you learn how to do that. And I took all my techs. They knew when the PSE Novas come in, the first thing they do is they're going to tear it apart, lubricate the limb pockets, put it all back together, tie
Mhm.
some string signatures on it, and set the rest up and set the sight up, and
Yeah.
so you can do the windage real easy on them because they're all center shot. So they get almost set up. So the only thing I do maybe is move the sight up or down, and everything else is pretty much ready to go. And it was a whole lot quicker setting up because everything is all
Mhm.
done. And
Yeah. That's good.
yeah,
Awesome.
I imagine you've got some stories of some equipment that you've worked on that have come in that's been abused, let's say.
Yeah, we see all sorts of stuff from dry fires to fell off the back of a truck while they're driving. You know, old Oneidas, and we still get all of that stuff coming in the shop all the time. But certain bows will we just can't work on. They're just too old. You can't get parts for them. The old cable bows, you can't get those break. This time, 30 plus years later, those cables are snapping, and so there's stuff that we're just like, what, this is now decoration.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I've got one that's a real old one. I've never seen the teardrop like this. It has like three different bars sticking out that you can put the string on, and of course you'd never shoot it.
yeah.
I'll probably clean it up a little bit and get the cams, the cables back in where it's supposed to be, and
Hmm.
make me a string that's probably longer than what you need, just so I have it together.
Yeah.
I'd never shoot it. It's more just like, huh, cool. It'd be fun to kind of play with. And a
Yeah.
nice create a video of it. If you have this kind of bow, well, this is the only thing you can do for it.
Yeah.
If you have to pay somebody to make a string for you, yeah, it ain't worth it. But
No.
because I got the material, I can do it myself. But yeah, I've had um, some bows come in, and I remember one time this kid come in and he had cranked the limb bolts out so far that the limb was out of the pocket and it had slid sideways just slightly and come in. And so I put it in the bow press and they were standing there. I said, you might want to stand back because this could come apart. So I pressed it, got it back in there, back in where it's supposed to be, and told the kid, it's like, okay, you cannot crank these out any further.
Yeah.
This is as far
Yeah.
as it'll go. And he says, his dad said, well, yeah, he's at the other shop in there, and they did the same thing. I says, well, this time it's $20. Next time you do that, it's $40. $20 to fix it, $20 stupid fee. He never came back.
That's good. Good man.
And his dad just laughed,
Yeah.
because the point was, you can't do it. And, a lot of the older bows, you can crank them out 4 turns.
Yeah.
That's all you can crank them out. And that was about 10 pounds. Well,
Yeah.
I knew on some of the PSE bows, I could actually go a couple more turns and it would be safe. But you got to know the bows. Some bows, you can't do that. And
Yeah.
now the new ones are nice because they're 20, 30 pound variation between them all the way in and out.
Yeah.
Those older ones, back 20 years ago, if you got a 60-pound limbs, you go 60, 70. It
Yeah.
could go below 60, maybe a couple pounds is all.
Yeah. That's pretty standard on the new bows. There's definitely a few brands that have like a 20 to 30 pound swing, but most of your high end flagship bows, Matthews, Hoyt, PSE, Lee, Bowtech, their high end bows are only 10 pound increments.
Yeah, and I can remember, then I actually set it up for my daughter. The bow had 70-pound limbs. I was able to get 60-pound limbs. I can't remember if I could get 50s, but she couldn't pull back that much. So I'm making strings and cables. You can make them longer and shorter, and you can change that. It doesn't perform quite as well, but you can get that draw weight down to
Mm-hmm.
where it would work. Now, she couldn't pull it back any other than that. So it didn't work. And I had, high end bow and I was a PSE dealer. So, all my kids have high end bows.
Okay. Hey, nothing
Yeah,
wrong with that. My kid does too.
yeah, why not? When you own the store, you might as well give them, something good. And, they all went through the cheap, kids bows, and then they get a little bit bigger and then they go on a little bit bigger ones. And,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of interesting, all the stuff you could do then. And the bows, you could press them in the old Apple bow presses, and the new ones I can't press them.
No.
I've got one that was like 2015. It was a bear, and I can just barely press that one,
Mm-hmm.
but I can press it because I had to make a string for it. But a lot of the new ones, the parallel limbs,
Yeah.
or those that are beyond parallel,
Yeah.
I can't even use my portable bow press, which is basically just a cable, because it
Yeah.
won't hook into them either. So
No.
it's like, you only make a string, you're going to have to take the string off because I can't take it off, and you're going
Yeah.
to have to put it back on. And I don't want to buy a new press that can work on them because I don't work on them anymore.
Yeah. Hey, if you don't work on them, you don't need a press.
Yeah, my bows I can work on with my press. So I don't need another press, and I'm not going to spend the money for a press I don't need, and I
Yeah.
have the stuff, and I have everything I need to work on my bows and do everything I need to do, and work on my
Perfect.
kids' bows, and I don't need anything else. And
Yeah.
you know, I'm not one for updating bows all the time. My hunting bow is a 2001 PSE. And my one I use for target, it's a 2003 PSE. And then I have a 2015 Bear that I got while I worked at Cabela's. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
those returns. I got in really cheap. So I bought it.
Yeah.
Put a new string on it, fix what was wrong with it, and never mounted a rest or sight onto it.
Yeah. Hey,
It just sits in my safe.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah, that's archery is kind of cool. You have all the different things that you can do with them, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just so much fun. And you can, like me, I'm going through. I'm going to have to work up to it. I have a left-handed 25-pound recurve. I just
Mm-hmm.
got to make a string for it, and then I can shoot that once I get where I can shoot that left-handed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a 40 pound, I think it's 40 pound PSE recurve. And, once I get up there, I can start working on that. And then maybe I can start working on, see if I can draw back my compounds, crank it down to 60 on my target one and go through that. And then,
Oh,
my hunting bow's at 70.
yeah.
So
Hey, you'll get
I know I'm not going to pull that back anytime soon.
it.
Some of them letting down is not very fun on some of them bows,
No.
because they're just, a big enough cam, and that
Correct.
PSE Carrera has a nice hefty cam on it. And it
Mm-hmm.
was rated at 320 feet per second. And this is 2001,
Wow.
320 feet per second.
Mm.
And I don't get that out of it. Never tried to, never wanted to.
Yeah.
I shoot fixed blade muzzies, and you start pushing them that kind of speed, they get real tough to control.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Slow them down into the 170s, 180s. You can control them just fine. I can set them up to shoot X's all day long with my broadheads.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
But pushing faster, yeah, it's not gonna happen. They're just too many things interacting with each other.
Yeah. Well, good.
Well, and in closing, what would you like to tell new archers, or archers that have been shooting for a while and want to improve their skills, or what would you suggest to somebody that wants to get better?
I would say go shoot leagues. Uh, we host a league during indoor season, winter. Uh, so we get all sorts of skill levels. So go shoot, go find your local league. I mean, almost every archery shop probably has some type of league night. Ours is a Thursday night, but go shoot a league because you may be nervous the first time or two, but you're gonna end up shooting with people that are better than you. So that was a big thing for me to how I ended up getting better at archery was just going and shooting leagues, getting beat by people, that I don't know, and you start learning them and you start seeing what they're doing and what equipment they're using and you're changing and all of a sudden you're starting to get better and then go to your local shoots, go to your local 3D shoot. Out here we got a tournament every weekend that I can go to within a 3 to 4 hour drive. So the best thing you could do is just get out there and shoot your bow and shoot with people that are better than you. So that was a big thing that really helped me was just going out there and getting my butt kicked all the time. Because then you're like, all right, what do I got to do? What's he doing different? What's he using that's making him better? And then you go to these leagues and shoots and you start recognizing people from the last time and you start talking to them. And I mean, the top archers, we'll just say in California here, they're not going to tell you to kick rocks. If you came up to ask them, and anyone could come ask me, hey, I'm doing this. What can I do different? Talk to those people. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to try to move stuff and learn how to adjust your stabilizers. And so get out there and shoot as much as you can is the best piece of advice I can give.
Yeah, be open and coachable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you're going to ask somebody an opinion, and then when they tell you, you just ignore them, then you wasted
Yeah.
their time, wasted your time. So
Yeah.
it may not work for you, but it might work for you. So
Yeah.
if they suggest something, try it, and
Yeah.
don't just try it one time.
Yeah.
Try it for several times a week,
Yeah.
couple weeks, and see. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't.
Hmm.
I know when I first learned back tension release, it's like it was not comfortable for quite a while.
No.
And then, and after a while, it's like, they said I was 29 and a half. I ended up shooting 29. And I
Yeah.
used to shoot 32.
Wow.
And I'm actually 29 and a half. And now I shoot 29. If I hadn't gone through all that, I wouldn't have been able to get better and, learn all these things and,
Yeah.
being able to teach somebody because, my form was, well, I didn't really have one because I didn't know any better,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And at that time, there was not a lot of people that was teaching you how to shoot. They just like,
Yeah.
my first bow was like, well, how's that feel? Okay, well, that's good for you.
You're good. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
no, I'm 29 and a half at draw length, but this is 32, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yes,
Well,
that's
it's
a good bit of advice there. Just go shoot as much as you can with people that are better than you.
yeah, and you get there, maybe you want to pay for a couple lessons with somebody. I've fixed some archers problem 45 minutes and we're done.
Yep.
Maybe come pay me for an hour of my time, pay me $100, $200, whatever, we're charging the time for an hour instruction, go work with somebody for an hour. And
Yeah.
then, maybe once a month say, hey, give me, 15 minutes. And you're going to improve so much better, by letting somebody find those things that you can't see because, you can't watch yourself shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's really been great talking with you.
Yeah, no, it's
I know
great.
I learned a lot. I didn't realize California had that many different animals to hunt.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad I got you on here to learn.
Yeah.
I learn something every time, and no matter
Yeah.
what it is, I learned something, and hopefully everybody that listens to one of the podcasts learn something, or at
Yeah.
least know where to go to get answers to
Yeah.
questions you might happen to have.
Yeah. I was happy. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Yeah, I always enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right now I can't shoot, but I can sure talk to archeries. I can talk archery all day long.
Nothing wrong with that.
Well, and if you have any questions, join the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group because we have archers out there. I'm out there. I've been an archery instructor since '95. I've worked on bows since 2001 when I became a PSD dealer. And, I've got some knowledge in there on some of the older bows. We have techs in there that have been working on newer ones, like Alan, you working more on the newer bows because
Absolutely.
you're at a shop that's out now. So if you have questions on a new bow or an old bow, get in that group and ask questions. We're not going to try and sell you anything. We're there to provide value to you and in the archery. And
Yeah.
if you're new or know someone wants to start, hey, be glad to talk with you. And if you want to get a little more personal information, hey, you know what? If you're a new archer thinking about starting, hey, get a hold of me. We'll get you on a podcast and we'll talk about what we need to do.
Yeah.
I'm open. That's why I call it Arch Talk 101 because, teaching, new archers what's going on. And,
Yeah.
that's what, I teach a lot of new archers. I do help some, more experienced ones once in a while, but, mostly, I like teaching new archers and,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I like to go. And it's always fun seeing the new archers, and how they go
Absolutely.
and and I have some other videos too, some instructional stuff out there on my YouTube channel. Learn to fix it yourself. So
Hmm.
go out there, look at those. You can always comment and I may not answer all of my depends if I see them or not. If I see them, I'll try and answer any questions I
Yeah.
happen to see. And then, of course, you can always listen to the podcast, while you're driving and stuff. Go out to audible.com and sign up for the Arch Talk 101 podcast. And as new ones come out, you get notified and you just listen to the new one. Or you can do wherever you listen to your podcasts. You use Spotify and there's all kinds of other places that I don't know where all it goes, but Spotify sends it out for me. So I don't know where all they go. They just go a whole bunch of different
Yeah.
places. Well, Alan, thanks for being on the show. I really enjoyed it. And my name is Roy Canterbury, and I've been your host on Arch Talk 101. And we'll definitely catch you on the next one. Don't remember, if you have questions, ask them. I always
Yeah.
say the only dumb question is the one you haven't asked.
That's right.
Because if you have a question, ask it. We
Yeah.
don't mind answering questions. But if
Yeah.
you ask the same one 10 times, we might
Yeah.
not understand what you're asking. But if you have a question, ask it. We'd be
Yeah.
glad to help you.
I'm an open book the same. So anyone wants to reach out, they could get a hold of me. I'm happy to help them.
All right, we'll see you on the next one, and make sure you follow along and comment if you have any questions. We'd be glad to help you.
Sounds good.